Hello guys and welcome back. So let's continue now. We have created our first smoke setup, and what we need now is we need to create the wind force that will push this smoke. We're going to leave it as it is, and then we're going to create a force to push it. But before we do that, I don't want this emission to be continuous forever. Right now it keeps emitting over and over and over, and I don't want the density to be always added to the sim. So I'm going to emit for 13 frames and then turn it off. So I'm going to set $F less than 13, enable this, otherwise if it's higher it's going to turn off the emission. So you can see now we're just emitting for 13 frames. I'm going to set that buoyancy back to 1 or 5. Let's leave it at 1, and let's add the force that we need. So I'm going to create a box. So I'm going to create a box that encapsulates the entire scene. This is the points, and this is the box. And the idea is we want to use this box to create some kind of wind around this entire sim. And I have this box, it's just a simple geometry, and I'm going to use a fluid source node. And with this fluid source, we need to go under the container settings, and instead of smoke, we're going to tell it to create velocity. Okay, and all we need to generate from this guy is a velocity field. So in here right now, there is no density field, there is no scalar fields, and we don't need those. We just need this guy. And right now there is no points to stamp this value from, so it's empty, because this mode is set to stamp points. But we can add explicit velocity. I'm going to set it to 1, 1, so it pushes the smoke in this direction, and then we want to add some noise to it. So I'm going to add this, and then the visualizer, I'm going to reduce it to display the smoke a bit better. Let's set this. Yeah, something like that, so we can see it. Better. Cool. So let's play with this. I'm gonna lower the scale, and I want the size to be bigger. So I'm gonna increase the swirl size. And let's increase this. This is just for preview, and I'm going to also animate the offset, because right now the volume is not changing too much over time, and I want to add offset to it to make it change over time quickly. So I'm going to use the dollar frame here. You can see it changes drastically, and we want that kind of breakup, because if we have it smoothly moving through changing over time, it's not going to change the volume too much. We want that to be, we want a lot of breakup. I'm also going to add another offset here to make it even more aggressive. So you can see now we have completely different noise over time every frame. I'm going to create a null and call this out val. Okay, and let's dive inside and create a merge node and add it here. And we can add merges anywhere. It would just go over the nodes in order. So if we have multiple nodes connected 0 to 10, for example, it will start with the first one all the way to 10 and then moves to the next inputs. So let's create a new source volume, and this one we're also going to set it to source smoke, but we're going to change a few things. So let me load in that out velocity, and let's set it to 20 just to see the effect clearly. And we don't have any scalar field, we don't have any density or temperature, so I'm going to set both of those to 0. And let's hit play and take a look, and we have our emission going. Cool. So the next thing I want to change is, right now if you select this node, you can see the velocity mode is set to copy. We need to change this to add, in order for it to not override the velocity coming from here. So we need to change this to add. And even though we don't have any velocity coming from this yet, we're going to have to change it to add to behave better with this, because we're hacking it to source only velocity from this guy. You can see it already that it's working over time, that it's more stable. The other thing that we need to change, if we go under masks, if we select this guy and go under mask, you see here it says velocity volume dot field to use as mask density. We don't want that, and what that means is it takes the density from the volume and multiplies the velocity. So we need to remove that. We want to inject this velocity in this entire domain, whether there is density or not. And this is going to give us a much better result. You can see now it's not using the density as a multiplier at all. And this is what we want. We want it to be independent. Now I'm going to change the scale to something lower, say 6. Cool. And I'm going to animate this value. So I'm going to set it to 6 in this frame, and then 3 at frame 5, and then 1, and then 0 at frame 8. I want it to just be on for a couple of frames to push the smoke, to have that force in the beginning, and then turns off. Cool. So you can see the domain right now is not changing over time. We're getting the smoke clipped, and to update, to have the grid domain update dynamically, we need to use a gas resize fluid dynamic node. So I'm going to connect that here. It should go in the first input before the pre-solve, and I want to delay it with 1 frame and then add a little bit of padding here. And let's hit play. It's going to wait 1 frame and then start squeezing the grid to match the sim. And right now it's still clipping, and the reason for that is because under the gas resize, if we go under max bound, it says here clamp to maximum initialization static. We don't want that. I'm going to turn that off, and I generally have it off unless there is a specific shot where you have where you need to limit the bound so it doesn't go beyond that frame. I would generally have this off and let the sim decide where it needs to go. Cool. So we have now some very curly motion happening, and this is actually a reasonable resolution sim. Well, it's a low res sim, but still. Cool. So let's let this run for a couple more frames. Okay. Cool. So the next thing we want to do is we want to add some ground collision for this. So I'm going to create a ground plane, and I'm going to create a merge node, and I'm going to connect that. Now see how I first connected the ground plane, then the input? And the reason for that, it's very important to follow the order of inputs in DOPS, because this here in the merge node, there is this effector relationship. Left input affects right input. So whatever you're going to have on the left is going to affect the right. It's not a mutual relationship. They're not both interacting with each other. This is a much more expensive process, and we don't need it in this case. So I'm going to leave it at that. And then let's hit play. We should see collision with the ground now, and the smoke. Cool. So I'm going to change the resolution of the smoke here to 0.1, and what I'd like to do as well, I'd like to copy this value, and I want to link everything else to have the same resolution. So each of these guys, they have a resolution, a division, because they are creating a volume. And I want the same resolution of the sim to match these guys. And the reason for that is you don't want difference. You don't want the source to be a very high res smoke when you're working with a low res sim, and vice versa. You always want them to match, because the source needs to match the grid, the sim grid, otherwise you're not going to see all the details. This is not so important because we're just using it as a velocity, but I'm also going to change it to, for the sake of consistency. And I'm going to hit play, and then we'll go and I'm going to wait for a few frames to sim, and then we're going to continue adding some more cool stuff to it in the next video. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in a bit.